Previously on the Sugar Baby Confessionals.
There's something about women like myself and Ruby that these men aren't finding out in the world. He's only ever loved two women in his life, his wife and his mother, and then me. Like in his mind, he just wants to see me get fucked by his son. That's how hot he thinks I am, that his son should have that experience. And I logged into the Gmail account that I had set up for him to back up all his contacts. And I see all of these emails from the casual encounter section of Craigslist. I was livid. I'm the only woman. It's me and 167 men. With Octocock, it's $1,200 a month because I just like him. The rest of them, it's basically $1,000 per date.
Traditionally, whoever has the money has the power, right? Not according to Ruby. This week we're looking at the power of choice, how to dominate your partner without being a dick, and we learn how Ruby earned the title Champion Liar. Spoiler alert, her pants were definitely on fire.
Good morning, Ruby. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you today, Esty?
I'm well, yes, very well.
Always such a pleasure to talk to you.
It is. Today we're talking about power and all that entails.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so tell me, how do you feel? Do you feel that these men are somehow buying pieces of you? Do they have the power, or do you in these sugar daddy relationships?
I feel like I have the power 100%. And that might be because I'm doing this as a type of sexual fetish. Very fortunately for me, I'm not a woman who's in a position that needs the money from these men. Mm-hmm. I just want it because it's very gratifying for me and, it turns me on. So I only spend time with someone that I want to spend time with. I never agree to anything that makes me feel even slightly hesitant or uncomfortable. I think that a lot of women probably don't have that kind of scenario. So, the concept of power is a very interesting one. And overall, it would be hard for me to say in general who's the powerful person in the relationship. Is it the man or is it the woman? I suppose it depends on who has the commodity that's wanted more. Right?
Yeah, exactly,
did you ever see that old Seinfeld episode where they talk about hand? Who has hand? And I definitely feel like I have hand in
as in the upper hand. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I think you're right. I think it's like if your body is the commodity that the men want, you have considerable power because you have choice. I think what it comes down to is choice. How much choice you have in a situation. Like if you're a poor woman who's maybe been, dragged into the sex trade at a young age, there's very little power if you desperately need the money. There's very little power if you're, say, a drug addict. You do just about anything to get a bit of cash.
Yeah, thankfully, I wouldn't fit into any one of those scenarios. Thank goodness.
We've talked about this already. How Ruby is lucky in that she doesn't need the money she earns from the sugar daddies. But I sort of feel bad now that we're laughing about it here because there are a lot of women out there for whom this is a reality that has little or nothing to do with what turns them on. Then again, there are probably loads of people in Ruby's position as well. It's not all doom and gloom here. Plenty of women do it to feel empowered. So maybe the laughter is okay? God, sometimes it's tough being an anxious liberal.
Between no more, we'll laugh and stir. Oh, weep no more, for you are dead. Between no more, we'll laugh and stir.
This idea of power is very subtle and very complex, because power plays into the idea of sex and the enjoyment of sex as well. In the S&M world, you get your dominants and your submissives. Although the dominant supposedly has all the power, because they're the ones who kind of dominating the submissive. Submissive is the one who has the safe word and gets to say, no, this is enough, or I don't like this.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. On the surface of it, if you look at S&M, you have the dominant person, the submissive person. It seems as if the dominant person is the one who's controlling everything, but really, it's the submissive person. You need to have that submissive person buying in to whatever kind of instructions or demands or commands that the dominant person is giving them in order for the dynamic to work. Yeah. And as soon as that submissive person doesn't buy in, the fantasy expires, the fantasy evaporates. And then the dominant person is left looking a bit ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
So I think it's much...
Get on your knees.
It's much the same.
Nah. What? Listen, just get on your knees, all right? Nah. Don't feel like it.
No, don't think so. It's much the same between, I think, a sugar baby and a sugar daddy. On the surface of it, it looks as if a sugar daddy has the upper hand because he's the one who has the money or the gifts. But, if that sugar baby doesn't want to participate, then he's just a man with a lot of money and his dick in his hand.
That's true. And, if you don't like anything, you're just going to say, you're going to be like, nope, I'm sorry, I'm out of here.
Well, have I told you anything about...
Ruby is the sugar daddy's real name here, so I had to cut it out. I wish I could tell it because, believe it or not, it's even weirder than the one we came up with. And I have a particular fondness for odd names. But alas, from henceforth, he shall be known as Zeus.
So Zeus, lovely older man, really interesting to talk to. I found him absolutely fascinating, just the way his kind of mind works and the things that he thinks about. And, our conversations were emails, whatever, very stimulating to me. And I was so excited to meet him. We had breakfast one morning, first time meeting in person, and I was immediately repulsed by him physically.
That seems pretty... I mean, that's quite extreme. Did he have, I don't know, a sort of a hunchback?
No. Listen, I received pictures of him. We exchanged photos, and he looked exactly like his pictures. It's difficult for me to put my finger on it. I wasn't repulsed by him in the sense that I didn't even want to sit next to him. I mean, sitting down together, sharing a meal, and having a conversation was fine. But the idea that it was going to lead into some kind of physically intimate territory completely grossed me out. This is the first time it had ever happened to me.
What was it? Was it his smell? Because obviously, if you saw his pictures and you agreed to see him, on the surface, physicality wasn't a problem. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's tall, he's fit looking, he's got a full head of silver hair, which I find quite appealing. He kind of ticks a lot of boxes that I like. It was a pheromone thing. I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, he did have these weird moles on his neck that kind of grossed me out a little bit. But I don't think it was that one specific thing.
Were they looking at you? Were they judging you?
They were winking at me. So the way that it went is we shared this meal, had a wonderful conversation. I would have to say, out of all of the potential sugar daddies I've met, the conversation that I had with him, I found the most stimulating, the most enlightening. It was really great. I enjoyed my time with him. And because of that, I thought, okay, you know what? Just don't be so vain, he's obviously a very cool guy. Just get over yourself a little bit. He wants you. He really, really wants you. And that's always a turn on for me. Being desired by someone is a turn on. And I thought that it would be enough. So at the end of our breakfast, I agreed. I said, yeah, I like you. Please send me suggested arrangements and we can come to an agreement on something and take it from there. So he sent me an email with his proposal, and I thought about it. And even if that man was willing to give me an allowance 10 times what I wanted, I still wouldn't be able to bring myself to kiss him. And I thought, no. Okay. So for me, this is where the line between sugar baby and escort is, right? So if I were an escort, in my own mind, I'm not saying that this is like the hard and fast definition for everyone, but in my own mind, I would be an escort if I took this man's money and agreed to be physical with him, even though I didn't want to be. I'm a sugar baby. That's what I'm comfortable with. And because of that, I won't spend time with someone doing something that I wouldn't want to do, even if they weren't giving me money.
Yeah.
So therein lies my power. As you say, it all comes down to choice. I chose to say no thank you to Zeus, and he was very gracious about it. He was very gentlemanly. So a good man, but just not my man.
That's the thing. I think when you're talking about pheromones, it's a very important thing. I think anyone, like friends even, it doesn't have to be like partners for sex. It's, some people can just not have the right smell or something, and you just kind of I don't trust that guy. You just like don't realize.
Some people just turn you off. One of those things. So too bad for Zeus. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
he did make a couple of creepy jokes that I didn't like very much.
Like?
Obviously I could tell immediately that he found me quite attractive. And he made a few jokes about how he wasn't going to let me go home. And, I'm never allowed to leave him now that he's seen how lovely I am.
Oh.
And I'm like, that's really so funny. Ha ha ha.
Well, maybe you were picking up on danger signals, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to cast aspersions on his character. I'm sure he's a perfectly nice person, but there might have been something dodgy about him,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I didn't leave the breakfast with him feeling overall like, ooh, like this guy's dangerous, but those little jokes made me feel a little weird.
Do you think that traditional masculine and feminine relationships are evolving or changing in terms of power?
Yeah, I would say that they are. I feel as if women are becoming equally valued. I don't want to say that men and women are the same, because we're really not the same. And I wouldn't want us to be the same. But that being said, we should be valued the same. I certainly feel as if the marriage that I have with favorite person is like that. I stay at home with our kids and he goes out and he works, but never for one moment have I ever felt as if he's more powerful in the relationship than I am. Or vice versa, really.
It's nice to hear Ruby say that. One of the things I worry about with regards to having kids one day is losing myself inside a mom persona, a version of myself where I sacrifice everything for my kids. Sometimes it feels like that's what's expected, even a biological inevitability. It freaks me out a bit, frankly. Ruby, on the other hand, is the same person she ever was, maybe even richer, and oddly more willing to take risks. P.S. I meant richer in the spiritual sense, but I guess that's true in the literal sense as well. Because of the sugar daddy payments.
I am the kind of person who has a very strong personality. I'm not sure if you've ever picked up on that about me.
Yeah, funny enough, yeah.
And that definitely and that does translate itself into the bedroom. I'm a very vocal lover. I give direction. I like to tell people what I want them to do and then make sure that they do it well, or they have to do it again. And I think that's a turn on for a lot of men. But something that I'm finding about myself becoming a sugar baby is that I want to relinquish that a bit. I'm looking for my sugar daddies to actually dominate me a little bit because I have such a forceful personality. So that's been an interesting development in my own life, to observe that about myself. It's like kind of a new piece of my sexuality coming out, this idea of giving up a certain kind of power.
What do you feel like you give up? What power are you talking about?
Well, in a sexual way. I'm looking to be dominated.
Okay. So you would, with favorite person, you'd normally be the more dominant party?
Slightly so. It's not like I'm some kind of leather-wearing, whip-snapping dominatrix. But I am more often than not the initiator, and I usually set the pace of our lovemaking. It goes at my rhythm.
Right, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking for someone to take that out of my hands.
Do you think that's the situation with a lot of people? I mean, I think a lot of women would like men to be a bit more dominant. If a man was listening, for example, and he's like, yeah, my wife says that to me, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What would you tell him?
Well, for me, it always starts with the preparation. And we had a wonderful conversation about that already. So something that I really love is when a man tells me what he wants me to wear for him, how he wants me to look. Wear your hair up, put this perfume on, wear heels or wear a dress, whatever, something specific. I want to know that I'm pleasing him. And that begins in the ritual of my preparation for him. So that's awesome. And being the person, I think, who plans the date. So don't ask, what do you want to do? Where do you want to eat? There's a certain kind of work that comes into having to think about these things and plan these things. And that's fine. That's exactly what I'm used to doing, making decisions. But making decisions can be tiring. And it's nice to just relinquish that and let somebody else take the reins. So that's number 2, is plan the date yourself. If your partner likes surprises, then keep it a surprise for her if she doesn't tell her. But either way, you're the one who should make the decisions. And
I mean, some people would go, well, listen, if I chose the wrong place and I could ruin the date and, then I'd just get it in the air the whole night long.
I hope that wouldn't be the case. Listen, I mean, if you've been with someone for a while, you know them, you know what they like. Just put a little bit of thought into it,
Yeah.
It's really, that's really not that hard. And it will make your woman feel very loved if you choose to bring her to a restaurant or you choose to go out and do something that she's going to like. And for any women who are listening out there, give your man the benefit of the doubt. If he's put forward a little bit of effort, even if he doesn't quite hit the sweet spot, just the fact that he's trying should really be acknowledged and appreciated.
Yeah. So if it's not 100%,
it's kind of like give each other the benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
Give it your best shot, give it a try. And the next thing that I would say to the men out there is, in order to dominate your woman nicely, is to be very gentlemanly. And I know that kind of sounds like, what? But it's true. When a man opens a car door for me or pulls out my seat or stands up when I get up to go to the bathroom, all of these very subtle, gentlemanly acts, they show me that he is really thinking about me. And that puts me mentally in the right place to want to please him.
Sort of priming yourself for sex, in that sense of thinking about the date that's going to happen. If you don't know what's going to happen, that can be quite exciting. I think for women, because a lot of it happens in your brain, that aspect of dominance is great, especially if you know that your man is kind of in control of what's going to happen and you don't quite know what it is. And
Absolutely.
I'm not so sure about the gentlemanly stuff myself. Personally, I'm not bothered about having car doors opened. I can open my own dang doors. I just can't reach stuff on high shelves. But that's why footstools exist. Still, I get what she's saying. The dominance factor is about the guy being the one more in control. And I suppose doing things like that, opening doors, standing up when you enter a room, coats over puddles, and so on, are a way of showing a subtle sort of control of the situation.
So I think since the last time we spoke to each other, I have had one more date with the Brit, which is the first time we've spent time together on a weekend, which was really cool because we got to have more time together, which I really enjoyed. So we walked around his neighborhood a bit, and we went to this really cool gay bar, which was lots of fun. I'd never been before. It was so kitschy. It had these very cool, like actual horse saddles that you could sit on at the bar when you were ordering your drinks. And we shared a bottle of bubbly and just chatted. And I love talking to this guy. He's such a good conversationalist. He was mentioning these like crazy escapades that he got up to when he was younger, and making me laugh the whole time. And then it wasn't a very nice day, unfortunately, so it was kind of windy and rainy. We walked back to his house after that, and we made beef stew together for dinner. We just hung out at his house and chatted some more, and, well, not really. We sat on his couch making out. It was something that I'm really enjoying about connecting with new people is the kissing thing. I may have mentioned this before, but even so, I have to say it again. I think when you're with the same partner for a long time, you just don't kiss each other enough. You don't kiss each other long enough, and kissing is such a wonderful thing. So we made out on his couch for a nice long time, and then he lit a fire. He's got a really beautiful fireplace in his living room, and he laid this huge, in fact, it's the largest beanbag I've ever seen, this gigantic beanbag, like twice the length of a person almost, or at least me. I'm not that tall. Right in front of the fire, and we made love there, and it was just incredible.
Were they not like off-putting scrunchy noises, you know?
Well, you know, I was either drunk or enjoying myself too much to notice. So they're probably, you know what? I really wish you hadn't have said that, SD, because now...
ruin the beanbag for you now. Oh, God, sorry. Oh, no.
If we ever do it again, all I'm going to hear is...
That sounds super romantic.
Yeah, it was. It was really romantic.
Who had the power?
And then, I don't know. I think I do, but I keep trying to give it to him. And then after a little while, he just picked me up. She said, I love that. That goes into the whole, how can you dominate your woman without being an asshole? Pick her up and move her somewhere. That's amazing. So he just picked me up in his arms so easily, like I was a little rag doll, and just carried me up the stairs to his bed.
Wow. I mean, how many stairs are we talking? Because...
No, full flight.
I don't know how impressed
12,
to be. Okay.
I think 14. I don't know. I mean, I haven't counted them, but it's quite a few. It's not like 2.
That's impressive.
We went from the bottom floor to the top floor. So,
with the best will in the world, my ass is quite big at the moment. I'm not sure if I would...
Hey, you know, big asses are in, man. Big asses are in. That is the trend. Don't knock on big... I still have quite a big ass. I know I've lost a lot of weight recently, but seriously, I got a badunkadunk still. So.
So he was able to carry you and your badunkadunk up
my
the
badunkadunk,
stairs.
yeah. All the way up. I was so impressed.
And by the time you got to the top, you were like, I'm ready to go again.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
It was another marathon. I kept waking him up, saying, come on, let's go, let's go.
Wow.
Which he never says no to. That's pretty friggin' awesome. It was really wonderful.
I asked Ruby if the money gave her a bit of distance from the men, emotionally.
Yeah, I can understand why you would make that assumption, but my experience so far has not been that, interestingly enough, especially with the Brit. He is my favorite sugar daddy, such a wonderful person, and I'm really developing a very strong affection for him. I feel like the money just makes things clearer. In a sense, it makes dating somebody just a lot clearer because you say up front, this is what I want and this is what I expect, and that's it. I think that if I were to be seeing the Brit and he wasn't actually a sugar daddy. We were just, quote, dating each other. There would be a lot more question as to, well, what do you want from me? Where do you see this going?
Do you take some of the stuff you try with them home to favorite person?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Anything that you try that's new and exciting. Oh man, I love sharing that stuff with FP.
So he
It's the best.
doesn't feel in any way odd about you coming back going, you know what? He put on the Spanx and he rode me like a or whatever, let's try that. Let me just get the
And then he neighed like a horse. And then, yeah. No, you know what? I have to say, favorite person is so cool about stuff like that. I think I mentioned it in a previous conversation that we had, that there are two levels going on with me being with other people for favorite person. One of them, and probably the strongest thing, is the compersion, right? The sense of feeling really happy about the fact that I am sexually fulfilled and happy. But the other thing is just, how did he phrase it to me once? I think the way he put it is that he loves having this need to compete. So when I'm with another person, he actually likes to hear the details of what goes on because it fires him up. It like gets him full of crazy lust, and he just ravishes me.
Does he do the same thing that you've described and then tries to do it better, or
No, it's not as specific as that. I mean, listen, he's got his own technique and his own style, and he's very, very good at it. No complaints from me. So he does his own thing. Hearing about what I get up to with a sugar daddy, it excites him so much. It just pulls out this kind of primal beast that just wants to ravish me. And I love that. It has really energized our sex life together. I had prearranged with favorite person ahead of time that I was going to sleep over. So we got up at about 7, made breakfast, and got to have breakfast together before I headed home. It was wonderful, actually. I'm just so enjoying. I'm really upset about the fact that he's going on such a long trip.
So when will you see him again?
On this weekend. So it'll be a week from the time I saw him to the time I see him again, and then that will be the last time I see him for a month. I think a little bit more than a month.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're kind of revising your idea, but you might sort of test the waters again with another sugar daddy, maybe.
Yeah, not because I really want to find anyone that's permanent in that space, but I just don't want to feel bored. That sounds awful, but it's just true.
It's interesting that Ruby seems to have slotted herself into the mold of bored housewife here. It's a tag I hate. It seems so dated, so not like how I think of her or any of my friends with kids. Haven't we moved past the stereotype yet? I guess this is my naivete showing. Of course, I know people get bored, especially when their children are young. I've just always had so many different projects to work on. It's anathema to me to imagine being so bored I'd be driven to doing something pretty extreme to alleviate it. With me, it's my writing. I'd be like sneaking out to write another chapter of my book, feeling dirty from all the Starbucks lattes I've been drinking while tapping away on my keyboard.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. I look forward to finding out how the next beanbag escapade goes. And
Crunch,
hopefully,
crunch, 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 crunch.
Wow, he's really fast. He goes really fast. So we'll have to see if Madeleine has any interesting experiences to share.
I haven't spoken to Madeleine in a while, so I'm dying to know how it's going with her sugar daddies.
Remember a book you were telling me about a couple of years ago? What was it like? I can't remember what you said. It was like how to fuck your wife or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But...
Oh, you know what? Favorite person read that one.
Cut to me, having checked the name on the interwebs.
The book was called Just Fuck Me, What Women Want Men to Know About Taking Control in the Bedroom, a guide for couples. And it's by Eve Kingsley.
I didn't read that one. In fact, I was told that I wasn't allowed to read it because there were all of these like tips and hints about how to get your woman into the mood, and he didn't want me to read that stuff because he didn't want me to know when he was working me.
I just wanted to read a little extract from Just Fuck Me by Eve Kingsley. She says, "Sure, there are some women who want to lie on their backs, look into your eyes, and gently rock back and forth. But most of us want you to channel the power of the sun through your penis and give us a good solid pounding." Which kind of gives you an idea of...
Oh, isn't that so true?
So you were talking about how Favorite Person had said to you that you weren't allowed to read this, but we are recommending this book, are we not?
Yeah. Yes, I haven't read it myself, but the end result was amazing. I mean, the book's not written for me anyway. Mm-hmm. It's written for Favorite Person and, other men like him. So I suppose I didn't really have to read it, even though I was curious about it. And I would definitely recommend it. I mean, he started really hitting the sweet spot after reading that book.
There's something about the art of being assertive, because with nice men, I think they find it very difficult to walk the line between being sexily assertive and kind of violence. Like, to them, I can really understand how if you're sort of a well brought up guy, you've got sisters and mom that you love, the idea of being violent, I guess, with your partner isn't appealing. You kind of think of it like that. So I can completely understand that for a lot of guys it's a bit like, okay, but what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to be that assertive without kind of creeping you out.
It takes practice.
It's all about communication, isn't it? That's the key, really, is to be able to ask your partner what they want, to just have honest discussions about it. And I know that is difficult. It's very easy to say, just communicate, but we all know how difficult it is. We all have insecurities and neuroses. We're afraid to ask for what we want. I'm saying all this, and I'm one of the biggest culprits. I'm, terrible at that.
You are, actually. I'm going to second that motion.
I'm not like my amazingly forthright American friends are just like, here is a list. It's very clear. This is what I want.
Well, no, but listen, I mean, everybody has their insecurities. I certainly have my insecurities. I think the thing is, you just can't let them stop you. You have to acknowledge them and look at them and accept them and understand that it's up to you whether those insecurities limit you or if they're just a piece of you like any other thing that's a piece of you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think also another thing to bear in mind is when having this discussion with your partner, like, what do you want? What are your fantasies? Be understanding and not non-judgmental about it. Listen to them like you would like them to listen to you.
What I would say is try to be non-judgmental with your partner as well as yourself, though. I mean, interestingly enough, the thing that I find easier to do is to listen to Favorite Person or a lover and be supportive of their fantasy and probe it and play with it and, try to turn them on with it. It's a lot more difficult for me to be non-judgmental towards myself and to open up and say what it is that I'm thinking. I mean, listen, it's probably easier for me to do it than it is for you to do it, SD, just because I've done it a lot more than you have. So I'm more practiced, but that's not to say that I'm always comfortable doing it. You just have to push past the discomfort. Yeah,
exactly. I was going to say, do you have any examples of where your first impulse was either to judge someone, like you were struggling a bit with what they were telling you they wanted, but you kind of worked through it?
I'm trying to think if I've ever encountered someone who wanted something that I found off-putting.
I mean, this is. I understand this is you we're talking about.
Yeah, this is me. I'm open to pretty much anything. Well, you know what? I'll tell you a moment. I wasn't put off, and I don't think that it would have been a problem had we ever done anything together. but there was a potential lover of mine that I met online. I never got to meet him in person. Things just didn't go the right way. But while they were still hot and heavy between us in terms of sexting and whatnot, he confessed to me that he really enjoys pegging. And I wrote back and I said, please excuse my ignorance. You've got to tell me, what is pegging? Are we talking about like a butt plug? You like plugging? And he said, no, I like being taken by a woman who is wearing a strap on.
Right, yeah.
And I just went, oh, oh, okay. Never done that one, but okay, And I think in that moment, I wasn't expecting that, so it shocked me a little bit, but not in a bad way. I mean, it wasn't like I heard that and all of a sudden went, ugh, like, I don't want to be with that guy. It was just like, okay, whoa, that would be a really new experience for me. Okay, like I'm willing and able, and therein lies that non-judgmental piece of myself when it comes to others.
Right.
Like who am I to judge what this guy likes? As long as I'm willing and he's willing, nobody's being hurt, it's cool, And
in terms of creating a safe space for openness about fantasies, how would you do that?
You go first. You lead by example. I am finding this again and again and again. Actually, even with favorite person, I mean, we've been together for years now, but if I think back to the very beginning, he was so shy about that side of himself. He was so hesitant. He felt so vulnerable. I'm sure he probably still feels vulnerable, but we trust each other so much. You don't even think about how vulnerable you are anymore. And that's what I'm finding again with the sugar daddies now, is if I ask a question and I see that they feel very timid, kind of uncomfortable answering, I'll say, well, let me give you an example of what kind of an answer, I'm looking for, or, where I'm going with this line of questioning. And I'll tell them something about myself. I'll reveal myself to them. And when you have somebody who's willing to show themselves to you, that really makes you feel special.
Yeah, it sort of makes you, because you're trusting them with something.
Exactly.
They are more inclined to trust you. Can you tell me a little bit actually about in the very beginning of you and favorite person's relationship?
What would you like to know?
In terms of building that safe space. You are sort of getting into a relationship with someone who's maybe a little bit less practiced. And how did you coax his fantasies out of him?
It took time. I think that being patient is a part of the safe space that you try to create, being judgmental, obviously we just spoke about, but also not pushing the person if they aren't comfortable with something. I'll ask a question, and I certainly did this with favorite person back in the day. And if he really didn't want to answer, or maybe he didn't even know the answer for himself because he'd never really thought about it before, I wouldn't keep pressing. I would just relax into the moment and let that kind of line of thought just sit there and germinate on its own. So being patient is really important. I think the motivation behind wanting to know your partner's fantasies is also key. I wanted to know these things about him because I wanted to be close to him. Well, I still want to be close to him, but I'm thinking back when we first got together. That's why it's in the past tense. I wanted to be close to him. I wanted to know him inside and out. I wanted to peer into all the little cobwebby dark corners of his mind, and see what was there. And that it takes time. It takes patience. It takes gentleness, I think, being very gentle and saying, it doesn't matter what I see. I'm going to like you anyway. Doesn't matter what comes out of that creepy dark corner that smells a little bit off because it's moldy and stuff. It's okay. I'm still going to like you. And
that's why our friendship works so well.
Yeah, probably.
That's a great way of putting it. I think that's what a lot of people are terrified of. At the base of it, a lot of people are scared that if they ask for something, the person's going to recoil and be like, that's totally weird, get away from me, you fruitcake. But this is kind of leading on to what I think is quite relevant to the power idea. And I wanted to ask you how the power sort of shifted in your relationship, if you can think of examples.
In the very beginning, Favorite Person and I were on very much equal footing, just totally smitten with each other. You know what that beginning phase is like. Here, the dopamine is popping in your brain, and you can't sleep and you can't eat, and all you want to do is consume that person. They are air and food and water to you. They're everything. When we were in that phase, I would say that it was equally intense for both of us. So it never felt as if one person or the other was more powerful.
Yeah.
We just kind of savored each other. And as time went on, eventually the dating became serious. We moved in together. And, the lovey-dovey phase wears off and real life starts to settle in. Things were really good between us. But after a while, his work got to be a problem. So I think that there was a real power struggle between us when it came to time, how much time we were spending together. He worked such insane hours. I mean, listen, I worked a lot as well. So I don't want to make it sound as if, I had some cushy, like roll in at 10, leave at 3 in the afternoon kind of job. I didn't. But that being said, he worked way more than I did. And after a while, I started to feel very resentful about that because I missed him. I didn't feel like I was the significant relationship in his life. Work was. And I spoke about it and I complained about it, and I'd ask him to come out with me. I'd ask him to come out with our friends. I'd ask him to meet me at places. And, I really have to say, probably 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, maybe like 98% of the time.
11 times out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. The answer was, oh, sorry, can't do it, have to work.
Yeah.
If we took a weekend away somewhere, he would bring his work laptop with him and have to do several hours on the weekend. Even when we were out to dinner together, the BlackBerry was always there. Yeah, it was very difficult. And so eventually I stopped complaining and I just started living my own life. So I think there again, the power kind of shifted maybe more to my side because I just thought, you know what, well, fuck it. I've asked and I've asked. I feel like I've made my needs clear. They're not being met. So I'm just going to go out with my friends and have a good time. So that's exactly what I did. I would go out 4, 5, 6 nights a week with different people. Mm-hmm. I was clubbing a lot, staying out partying.
Were you seeing other people at this stage in your relationship or
No. We were living together. We were exclusive to each other. And I wanted him. I wanted him to be a part of my life. And it felt like he wasn't. So I think in a way I was kind of moving on. And if he had stayed at the job that he was working at, we wouldn't be together right now. That is a certainty in my mind.
The wild grows again, and I am no one at last. Mankind disappears, and up comes the earth.
So what was the kind of breakthrough where everything changed? What was the cause that life change?
We both quit our jobs and went on a huge trip together for 4 months. Just traveled around. It's something that had been planned for a long time. It wasn't spontaneous. We needed to save up for quite a long time in order to do that. In fact, it was over 2 years worth of saving.
I remember this time. My husband and I stayed with them in their tiny apartment, just a few blocks away from a large park. It was literally one room with a minuscule bathroom and kitchen off to the side. It was cramped, but we had so much fun. Maybe I'll always see that time with rose-tinted glasses because that was the trip my husband proposed. I was clueless, had no idea who was going to do it, and Ruby was in on the whole thing. She took us around the city where she was born and bred, and that evening when the sun was just setting at peak romantic witching hour, she made a strategic exit at exactly the right time. Looking back, before the proposal, I remember Ruby asking me all these pointed questions, making me look at wedding magazines, design dresses for her, and this is all despite the fact that I am not and never have been a wedding person. White dresses just seem like a throwback to the virgin lie. Lie or not, we sure looked at a hell of a lot of them. I just thought she was excited about her own wedding to come. That's the kind of friend she is. She wanted me to be as excited about my wedding, before I even knew it was happening, as she was about hers. Then they went away on their fabled road trip.
Wow.
And the reason that we had this plan is because it was always a life dream of favorite person to do this. And when he told me about it, I was like, fuck yeah, sign me up for that. That sounds amazing. So we came up with a plan and we really stuck to it. It's one of the things that I remain so proud about, that the two of us accomplished this. And we saved up enough money to do the trip. And then at the end of it, we moved to a different country and we got married. So it was quite a whirlwind couple of years, probably about a year and a half of just crazy.
A lot of change. But was there a part of you that before the trip was kind of a little bit worried? I mean, if you're talking about having sort of been moving away from each other a bit, and then the idea of spending, 4 months in quite close confines together.
Yeah, I was kind of petrified. I mean, if you'd asked me at the time, I don't think I would have been able to put it in quite those words to you because it was just too much to process all at once. But I was really worried. Back then, I remember thinking to myself, okay, this trip is either going to make us or break us. We are either going to know that we should be getting married at the end of it, or we will very clearly know we should not be getting married. And I mean, you know how the story ends. Thankfully, at the end of that trip, we had worked out so many of our issues. We healed a lot as a couple, felt so close to each other. It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
And clearly you didn't murder each other, so that's a good thing.
No, we didn't murder each other. We just had so much fun. I mean, that's the wonderful thing, I think, about finding the person who is your true love. When it's just the two of you in a natural state of being and you don't have all of these other pressures on you one way or another, either good pressure pushing you towards something that's happy or negative pressure that's pushing you towards something that's difficult and painful. Either way, when it's just you and your partner and the two of you just be and everything is perfect, then you know it's right. It's as simple as that.
And having other people involved in your life sexually does not take away from that, you've been finding.
It was something I was a little concerned about when we first started down this road, but I have to tell you that so far it's been wonderful for us. Really, really wonderful for us. It's ignited the passion between us again. I mean, we've had sex every single night this week. I mean, how many other people, married people, I mean, we've been together for over 10 years. How many other people do you know are like that?
Very few. Although, to be fair, I don't really talk to my other married friends as openly.
Excuse me, can I ask you how many times you have sex with your partner in a week?
Mom, Dad, I've got a question for you. Yeah, actually, my mom can be a little bit too forthright. I have to stop her from telling me stuff. There's been times where she's been like, look at these pictures on my phone, and we've been sliding across.
Oh, no!
And something awful will come up, and I'll be like, oh, my eyes! My eyes!
That's just inappropriate, though. Oh my gosh, that's taking it too far. But to try and show pictures, oh my gosh.
I don't think she was trying, because we were looking at other photos, but then she was like, oh, those are my breasts. And I was like, my God, mother, what are you doing? And she told me against my will. She told me that, oh yeah, your dad was downstairs one day and I was upstairs, and I just decided to send him a nice picture, you know?
Well, hey, that's really cool, actually.
He joined me shortly afterwards, and I was like, stop right there. Stop right there before my brain explodes. But yeah, so you know,
that is so gonna be favorite person and I. Really. That's wonderful. Good for your parents, man. That's really cool.
I mean, yeah. Oh God, let's stop talking about it.
Moving on.
Moving on. Okay, so you actually immigrated your home country where you're born and bred, and you went to a very, very different place, and you went from having an incredibly busy job, being very successful in what you're doing, to not having a job and kind of being in a new place, new culture.
Yeah, it was very
I'm talking
difficult
about
time.
the power dynamic in particular between the two of you. How did that shift and change?
Yeah. Listen, favorite person never gave me a hard time about anything in terms of, you know, we moved to his home country. So he's not from where I'm from. He never put pressure on me to get a job or to figure out what I wanted to do right away. He, you know, thankfully he makes a good living. And so I was afforded the luxury of time. And it did really feel like I was powerless for quite a while. That's not something that I was comfortable with. I'm the kind of person who has always kind of taken care of herself. And I was certainly raised by a very strong mother who said, don't rely on a man, get your education, you know, get a good job, follow your own career path, take care of yourself, always be independent. So moving to favorite person's country and not being able to work, I didn't have a work permit. It was a real leap of faith. It was very, very difficult for me. And on the surface of it, I know how imbalanced that seems. You know, he's the person out in the world working, earning a living, and I'm the little Susie homemaker pottering away doing what? Right? Doing what? People would ask me, what do you do? And I would tell them, I self-actualize. That's what I do. And, you know, I kind of said it a little tongue-in-cheek back in the day when I was going through that phase. But now looking back on it, I realized just how honest an answer that was. I was self-actualizing. So we got a dog, and I would go hiking up a mountain that was just outside of our back door. Literally, I would just walk out the back gate of our house and be on this beautiful, lush green mountain. So I would go hiking every day with the dog and just meditate, you know, just center myself, just relax. And, you know, God, it was amazing. It was amazing. That time of my life, I changed more than any other time in the history of my years on this earth. That was the time during which I decided that I think we should have a family. Before that, I was very adamantly against having children.
Oh.
So you can imagine favorite person's surprise when he came home from work one day and I put dinner down on the table in front of him, sat down, looked him in the eye and said, we need to have a baby.
I'm fascinated to hear that Ruby just decided one day she was ready for kids. Like, she woke up and it was there in her brain that she was ready. I have to admit to having a lot of fears and anxiety around the idea of bearing children. On the one hand, I like to imagine talking to future kids, possibly who favor my husband more than me, with his sense of humor, and maybe not such a hairy little hobbit person. On the other hand, I come from a giant Catholic family. I have some idea of just how hard it is to raise children. No matter what, you give up a good couple of years to feeding, changing, and running around after a tiny human. In a sense, and to get back to our theme, you give up any control or power over your career, your life, because there's something so much more important going on. All your plans, your hopes and dreams are diverted towards not totally fucking up, as Philip Larkin would say, your children. I don't know if I could cope without my work. It's too important to me. Luckily, I have a lot of amazing creative friends who've managed to do it. It's hard, and it takes a good support network, but they're still producing work.
This is the big thing that I learned during that particular phase of my life. So as we were saying, I moved, I wasn't working anymore, I was just at home. and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I did feel very powerless because I'd never been in that position before. In fact, I'd never even contemplated putting myself into that position before. And favorite person continued to value me. He never made me feel powerless. His kindness and his patience and the way in which I know he valued me just created this wonderful space for me to figure myself out. It was amazing. And now, I mean, we have what anybody would look at on paper and say the most kind of ridiculous traditional marriage. I mean, he goes out and he works. I stay home with the kids and take care of our domestic life and the running of the household. And that's it. You know, I mean, you can't get more 1950s than that. But somehow it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
It really genuinely doesn't feel that way. And maybe it's because this is what we are choosing, because I have that choice. I feel liberated in it.
You say you feel strange. You say you feel strange. No.
One of the biggest things in helping the power to be balanced is to be incredibly honest. You've told me before that you went through a stage where you'd lie a lot, and I don't.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I am such a good liar. I don't know if have I ever told you this. I'm like the kind of like psychopath. Like hook me up to a lie detector, polygraph, and I will pass it with flying colors and not bat an eye.
Why?
It's
What do you mean?
It's like
what?
evil genius level of lying. I don't know. I think I come from a long line of liars. Wow, that alliteration was great.
know,
A
it's
long line
fantastic.
of liars. I learned very young from various family members that I saw lying to other family members. Like, okay, this is socially acceptable. And if you want to avoid confrontation, that's what you do. Just tell them a little lie and makes life so much easier. So
what kind of lies are you talking about here?
Oh, I don't know, anything I felt like lying about. I had no moral compunction about it. I would just be like, blah, 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 you know? Then I met favorite person, and we became so close. And I decided that I wanted to really show him who I am, warts and all, like deepest, darkest secrets, all the nasty sludge. I'll just go, yeah, and put it out there and see what happened, because I wanted to be truly known. You know, I feel as if people in general, you don't feel completely loved unless you are completely known. Because if you're not completely known, there's always that question in your mind. Well, but if they knew that, if they had this little kernel of truth, then they'd realize I'm not worthy of love.
Yeah.
You know, there's that fear there. I mean, it was years ago now, years and years ago. I haven't been a liar in a very long time, I'm proud to say.
I asked her what it was that changed her from being a liar to a non-liar. I mean, she talks about it as though it's like being an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Favorite person and I had the most intense conversation of my entire life, and I just laid everything out on the table for him. All of my deepest, darkest secrets, anything that I had twisted or omitted or downright lied about, I just put it out there. And I was so petrified. I really thought that he would just say, wow, right then, cheers. You know, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. But he didn't. You know, he listened to all of it, and he was wonderful. And he loved me anyway, knowing all of these things about myself that made me feel ashamed, made me feel regretful, made me feel dirty, made me feel bad about myself. I told him everything, and he loved me anyway.
Oh, wow.
And that was such a healing moment in my life. And I made the conscious decision, actually, after we had that conversation, that I wanted to be the kind of person that he saw. I wanted to be worthy of his love because he was giving it to me anyway. And I just thought, you know what? Like, let's be the best person I can be. Oh, that sounds so fucking cheesy. It's so true. It's so true.
That you can be. That's my jingle for today. Just in terms of the fact that we were talking earlier about you coaxing favorite person's fantasies out of him, and you almost mirrored the exact same situation where your kindness to him allowed him to be able to open up about those fantasies without feeling shame. And I guess in terms of power, being vulnerable makes you feel very powerless.
You know, it's interesting. I think on the surface of it, that's true. Being vulnerable can make you feel powerless, but something that I've learned over the years of practicing being honest and practicing being as authentic as I can be, practicing being myself as much as I can and just putting myself out there again and again. And it started with favorite person, but it didn't end with him. I've found that everything in my life becomes so much more beautiful and richer when I am out there. I'm just myself. I'm vulnerable. And sometimes I get hurt, but I actually think there's a lot of power in just being you. You know, one of my favorite quotes by one of my all-time favorite authors, Joseph Campbell, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." And I love that so much. It's something I think about a lot, and I try to live that way. You know, a part of the whole sugar baby wanting a sugar daddy thing is that I'm living my life the way I want to. I'm trying to fulfill myself as best I can. I'm being as vulnerable and as authentic as I can possibly be. And I actually think that's a very powerful way of living.
Yeah.
I think that is living to the fullest.
Yeah, no, that's... And very few people...
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I was going to say very few people... Sorry, I'm also a bit off my game today. They're like, good, yeah. That sounds good to me. Snap out of it.
It's wonderful to hear how supportive FP was of Ruby when she was going through a difficult time. He seems to have given her a lot of space to enable her to explore her feelings. I would have liked to hear more about what Ruby meant precisely about her self-actualization. I guess there had to be someone out there doing it. I'm not sure if we established once and for all how to have power in your relationships, or if you get it, what to do with it. For some reason I'm picturing He-Man right now with his weird bangs, holding his sword/phallic symbol above his head and shouting, "I have the power!" Then again, he always had a pretty suspicious relationship with Man-at-Arms. Maybe there was a bit of a sub-dom thing going on there? If you're not getting these references, it means I'm a lot older than you. I guess He-Man had the power in as much as he said it, loudly. He claimed it, he owned it. In the end, maybe that's all there is to it. Next week, we'll be talking about religion. Yep, we're gonna go there. Also, Ruby explores BDSM with the Brit, and she drops a bombshell about her sexuality. All this and more on the Sugar Baby Confessionals. This podcast was produced and edited by me, Sarah Mae Tucson, with help from Beth Keane, Mike Scott, Geraldine Elliott, and Catherine Hoffmeyer. The music you've heard on this podcast comes from Danny Green's albums Obituaries and Leish, as well as Kristen McClemon's album The Wild Grips. Find out more about Leish by going to leishmusic.com, that's Laish music.com, and hear Kristen's work at kristenmcclement.com. As ever, we'd love to get your thoughts on the podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email us here, fablegazers@gmail.com. We've been chatting with amazing people like writer and broadcaster BB Lynch on Twitter, where we're at @fable_gazers. She and others have described the podcast as beautifully put together, intriguing, off-kilter, and very candid. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is very much appreciated, and it helps to keep us going. Names and details have been changed to protect the anonymity of those involved. This has been a Fable Gazers production.